consistency is a big thing. I had an experience, a realization with a reed that I used for a hotel gig,
Yeah.
which was a 2 month gig, and we played every single day, Monday through Sunday.
Wow.
And it was consistent, and it wasn't continuous playing. It was with a singer,
Yeah.
and like
Right. Solos and whatever parts and whatever.
yeah,
Right.
intermittent.
Right.
And that read lasted, was consistent and lasted the whole 2 months.
Yeah.
No changes. And I think it's just like it never really got to that really dry
Yep.
part,
Yep.
and
Yep.
it wasn't overplayed.
Yep. Yep. Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. Yep.
So that's another thing. Yeah.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah, every reed has its. That's the thing. It's what I found is that every reed has its own life cycle, and some of them have long ones. Particularly like you said, in a kind of a medium stress, like not too high, not too low, like a moderate stress environment. If the life cycle happens to be long, you can play it indefinitely. You go play a rock and roll, go sit in a session on one of those nights, playing with some rock and roll guys screaming, and so you might blow it out. But if you're playing at a moderate volume with a singer, doing relatively straight ahead, keep it in the pocket, keep it in the low, relatively moderate vibration zone, yeah, you can keep it going as long as the reed has a life cycle. I mean, some reeds, like I say, the reed itself is probably a factor, because some reeds, I've got some reeds, God, I played them, I lost count of how long, weeks and weeks and weeks and weeks, just because the reed itself is just a great reed with a great life cycle, and every reed's different, so you have to, as long as you're using cane, you have to just be conscious of the potential for it to go. I've had other reeds that played great, and but a week later they've lost a lot of their vibrancy, so it just depends. But it's great when you can have those, and obviously the kind of playing you do affects the life cycle for how long you can actually play the reed once you determine what the life cycle actually is. So
Yeah, and something like that too. You could have a really great read. You're just going and going, and then you get, overly ambitious in one of your practice sessions, and you do too many overtones, and it turns to cardboard.
Well, that's it. That's it, and that's why I have practice reads for that. I have practice reads that if I have a gig if I have a read that I want to save for gigs, it's really good. I'll save it. I'll have it and it stays in the reed case or it stays in a cup underwater or whatever. And then I got practice reads for the overtones and for the kind of journeyman exercises that you have to get through. You still want to have a great tone. You still always want to practice with all that stuff, all the good habits. But the reed itself, you're using a reed that's not the optimum reed for gigs. You're using it for practice, and that way you can reserve your gig reeds for the ones that are really responsive and sound great, for those situations where you really want to be heard that way. And I think once you adapt to any reed in practice, after about 15-20 minutes, you adapt to everything pretty much anyway. So here's my practice reed, I'm cool, And so yeah, I've done that before. I've messed around and shit and shot my good read sometimes. The read that I really liked for a gig because it felt so good. Oh man, let me just deal with this. And then it's like come to the gig and it's a few days later or whatever, and it's lost its mojo. It's like should have kept it. So yeah, so being mindful. I think that I was never really mindful as a younger person. But one thing I always did is I kept all my reeds. I never, some people, they crush them on the edge of the stand, just split them and toss them if they don't like them. I keep all my reeds because until it's really dead, because you never know. A different mouthpiece, a reed that doesn't work on one mouthpiece at some stage in its life cycle, you put it on a different mouthpiece or a different ligature, the puppy comes back to life. I've had it done time and time again. In fact, I played a lot of the first half of the first 10 years of the 21st century, in 2000 and 2010, even 1990s, I was using old reeds. Like that also old Van Dorens that I'd used from the 80s, I'd saved them. And once I learned kind of my new contemporary way of managing reeds, I went back and all those reeds I kept that were good reeds were still good reeds. Once I revived them, I'd get 2-3 more weeks out of them. And I played them for years. I didn't buy reeds for years. I mean, gosh, at least 10 years. Just playing old reeds. And so that's another good habit. It's like even if you're not really tuned into how to manage your reeds yet, it takes a while to figure that part of it out for yourself. But if you haven't worked it out yet, then just keep the reeds. And then if you do that, at some point you may figure out how to revitalize unless the reed's really dead. Like if it's shriveled up and stuff, just toss it. You know, if it's gray and shriveled, it's done. But if it looks like it might have some life, even if you don't like the way it feels today or tonight or whatever at the gig or something, just save it. Because sometimes once you learn how to clip a little better, you get a better clipper, or you deal with some other kind of reed maintenance thing. I tell you, man, I saved so much money just to revitalizing those old reeds, and it's frustration because when they're good until they really die. And so I was able to keep them going. So that's another good habit is I just kept those older reeds. And then I think once you learn how to do some of the basic maintenance and learn what works for you and for your mouthpiece and for your setup and for the sound you're going for and for your instrument, excuse me, once you work all that out, then I think the reed thing, at least it's manageable. Even if it's still frustrating sometimes, at least it's manageable. You got some techniques, you got some ways to extend the life of reeds and have them organized in such a way that it's not like a crapshoot every time. Like in the old days, man, it'd be kind of a crapshoot, honestly. It's like, oh my God, I don't know what I'm gonna get. But now I have systems that pretty much allow me to consistently know what's going on, and that's very comforting. Considering like Illinois educate, the reeds, the whole thing, man, the vibration, that's the vibration right there. So you really do have to have some way to manage that well. And they're expensive now, so when I first started playing saxophone, reeds were $1 each. You buy them for $1, and it's not that anymore. Talk about inflation, like $8 each now. So you really have to be kind of savvy and smart about them. So
yeah.
So I want to tell you two more things about the reeds. First off, I want to tell you my clipper story. So one time I was in Groningen in the Netherlands, and I was hanging out doing my teaching week there, and it just so happens that there's a big concert hall, and the conservatory is called the Prince Claus Conservatory. So next to Prince Claus is a concert theater called the Oosterpoort, and the Oosterpoort hosts all kinds of concerts, classical and jazz and rock and all kinds of things. This particular concert, and I played there myself a few times, all of us faculty members played there, it's just kind of standard procedure, but this particular concert, James Moody was there, and he was there with his quartet on tour. So I was rapping, I'd known him for years, I'd met him, over here in Jersey on some concerts and stuff, and we were always, he's super cool, man. James Moody, he passed, 15 years ago, but super neat guy and everything, and he was always super nice to saxophone players, and so, hey, Don, blah, blah, hey, man, how you doing, James? Oh, I'm doing great with my reeds, man. Everything's just too soft. I'm really not, oh, why don't you clip your reeds? He said, clip my reeds? What do you mean? 80 years old, he never clipped a reed. I said, oh, let me check, let me give me a reed. I'll clip it for you. So I got my clipper out. It wasn't this one, it was a different one. So put the reed on, I clipped it for him, gave it to him. He's like, he almost fainted. Oh my God, the reed is so much better, blah, 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 blah. He was so happy. So I said, wow, really? Well, you know what? Here, take this. I gave him my clipper. These cost like $60. But of course, I didn't hesitate. This is James Moody. So I gave him, I said, oh man, thank you so much, blah, blah, blah. I saw him the next day. He clipped all his reeds. He was so happy. And he could clip his reeds and play the reeds he thought were dead. He clipped them and got them back to life. So I thought, wow, I got to teach James Moody something. How cool is that? So, however, the one challenge on my end is like, well, however, I keep two of them at all times, and it happened that I lost my other one, and that was my last one. I gave it to him, of course, without hesitation, but now I was out without a clipper, which is not particularly comfortable for me since I do use them to maintain my. So I got through everything, and about a month later, I was back in the States, and I was on tour in the middle of the country somewhere, and a college kid picked me up to go to this university thing. I said, man, can we stop by a music store so I can see if I can buy a reed clipper? So I went to the music store and I saw a couple things. I bought a little saxophone stand, a portable one. I was, hey man, you have any reed clippers here? I was asking the guy, and he said, I don't think so, but let me check. He opened a drawer and pulled out the same one, this one, and he said, why don't you give me $5 for it? It wasn't in a case or anything. I'm like, $5? Yeah, give me $5 for it. So sure. And they cost like $65, $70 now, So he just gave it. It's almost as if James Moody's spirit, well, he was still alive at that time, but his energy sent me to that particular store to get the reed clipper that I gave him a month later. Isn't that cool? So I ended up getting it back after all for $5, and it was exactly what I needed. And it was a tenor clipper, and it would just have to be extra. He didn't have a case. He wasn't selling them. He just happened to have it laying around. I'm sure he wasn't even sure where he had it, but he sold it to me for $5. So that was really cool.